Hello, and welcome to the Vicars Watch Dibley,
the podcast where real priests talk about pop culture and what we've learned about faith, life and the church. We've watched Dibley, now we're watching everything else. I'm Kate.
I'm Ross.
And I'm Ruthie, and today we need you to cut yourself a fringe in, get your black eyeliner, because we are talking about the Traitors. In the most recent series, there's been a vicar who's been on it, and so we talk about the show as itself. As a priest, could you be a traitor on it? And then we talk about the ultimate traitor from the Bible, Judas.
Well, a holy happy hello to you all.
Hello!
Hello!
We're in our vicarages and you're listening in. We're ready and raring to talk about the Traitors. But first, we've got a few notices. So Ruthie, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, we're back!
We're back!
Hi!
Hi!
We had some ideas of what we wanted to do in January, and then kind of chaos happened, really, for all of us, didn't it? So we just decided to have January as a bit of a break and a bit of time off. So that's what we've done. And but now we're back, and we're just kind of working out what we're doing next. Because we want to keep doing things, and that would be exciting. But things have got chaotic. But one chaotic, exciting thing that I did is I ended up on the radio talking about blooming Vicar of Dibley.
And like proper radio, BBC radio.
BBC Radio. BBC Radio 5. I ended up on there talking about Vicar of Dibley because a load of stamps have been released because it's the 30th anniversary of Vicar of Dibley. And so I went on talking about how the show has influenced my life, and yeah, it was really good. Really good chat.
You've done us proud, Ruthie.
You did.
Oh, cheers, guys. I got bumped twice. I was going to be on Drive Time Radio, but I ended up at like nearly 1 o'clock in the morning, I think it was. I ended up, but I did get a longer interview. So yeah, that was crazy, but good fun to do. Yeah, there you go.
And thanks for representing us on radio. You were amazing.
Aww.
But yeah, it has been a really full-on start to the year. And actually, we all took some time and chatted to one another and realised that this year is only going to become more full-on for each of us in different ways. I'm going to be becoming a training incumbent later this year. I'm going to be looking after a baby priest. So that's going to be an exciting new thing going on in my own ministry. And you've got things going on in your lives as well.
Yes, so my partner Nat, who edits our podcast, got a new job finally. Woo! So now works as a chaplain for a care home, which is amazing. So that means her time is more limited as to when she can edit. And I'm just bumbling along trying to keep all the plates I have in life spinning. What about you, Kate? You've got exciting news as well.
Yeah, so our team size changed. We had someone who found a new job, and that triggered a whole conversation about restructuring our deanery, which is a group of 35 churches, and I agreed to take on more churches. So I'm taking on 3 more churches, 3 more parishes, and that area includes the hamlet of Dibley.
Amazing.
So I will officially be able to introduce myself in about 18 months because the legal process takes ages, but I'll be able to introduce myself as the Vicar of Dibley.
That's incredible.
Amazing.
I don't know, the Crown patrons could still turn around and say no, but it's pretty much a done deal at the moment. Also, until we replace that colleague who's left for a new job, and I've got another colleague who's going on sabbatical, we are a very thinly stretched team at the moment. So my summer is looking very, very wedding heavy at the moment.
Oh, bless you. I mean, we love doing the podcast. We want to keep doing the podcast, but we are going to have to think of ways in which we can ensure that this continues to be life-giving to us, and also hopefully entertaining and insightful for you all. So bear with us as we try out a few things this year. We've got some fun tricks up our sleeve. But yeah, and let us know what you think as we go along.
So we might experiment with new formats, we might just try new stuff out, discover new stuff. And talking about discovering new things that we love, we have collectively fallen in love with it's not really new anymore, but it was new to us, a new format of reality TV show. So Ruthie, tell us all about the Traitors.
Yeah, so today we're going to talk about the Traitors, which I think all of us have binge watched over the last 24 hours, 36 hours, because we thought, well, it's been infamous this year because there's a vicar who is one of the members of the group. And so people have been talking about that. So we're like, well, if we're talking about social media and stuff, not social media, if we're talking about media and life and everything like that, and there's a vicar on the telly right now, well, it makes sense for us to be chatting about it. But none of us had watched The Traitors before, had we?
I'd only followed it on social media through all of the memes.
Yeah.
So I hadn't watched any episode, but I'd seen all of the Claudia Winkleman gifs and clips and enjoyed it from that angle. But it's been a whole other experience binge watching it late into the night. I was up till 3 p.m. last night just watching.
3 p.m.?
Oh, wait.
3
a.m. Sorry.
3 a.m.
That's how tired I am.
You're that tired.
I had watched the Dawn French skit for comic relief.
Oh, yes, I've seen that as well. Yeah.
And that was it.
Yeah. So we all kind of said, well, we'll do this because it's in the media, and we hadn't really watched it. And then we've watched so much of it. And for those who've never seen The Traitors, like us a few days ago, this is the concept. So over 20 people, I think it was 25 this season, but it's less than that in others, all appear at a castle up in Scotland. No one knows each other. They're all strangers most of the time. And they are split into two groups. So 3 become traitors, and the rest of them are all faithful. And through various different challenges to earn money, they have to try and work out who are the traitors and who is faithful and who they can trust and who they cannot trust. And people tell lies about themselves. People are very truthful about themselves. And there's lots of different ways to play the game. I remember playing this in a youth group at church.
Yes.
And what was it? I think it was called Murder in the Dark. I think that's what we called it. But you guys know it as werewolf, is that right?
I know it as werewolf or mafia.
Yeah, or mafia. Murder in the Dark,
mafia.
Werewolf, mafia. All the sort of games where at the start of a game you pick a piece of paper out of a hat and that tells you what your role is in the game. And there's goodies and baddies, or villages and werewolves, or citizens and mafiosos, or whatever. And then everyone closes their eyes, and if you're a baddie, the group of you point at someone to murder, and then you close your eyes, and then you open your eyes if you're one of the other people, and you'll have to point to someone who you think could be the baddie, and then everyone opens their eyes again, and it's revealed what happened during the night.
It's part RPG. It's basically a role-play game. But also, it's fascinating to see people trying to work out how to win the game using logic based on the lack of evidence that there actually is. And then it becomes a real psychological drama and game as alliances and assumptions are thrown around. It's fascinating.
Yeah, so if you're more Gen Z, Gen Alpha, you'd liken it to Among Us, right? Where you've got...
of course.
Yeah. So, the way a day works, they start breakfast and they find out who's been murdered the night before. They then do a challenge. They then meet round the round table and decide who they think might be a traitor. And then they vote publicly who they think might be a traitor, and whoever gets the most votes has to stand up and has to declare if they are a traitor or they are faithful. So all the faithful are wanting to get rid of the traitors, or the traitors are wanting to stay in and stitch up other faithfuls. After all that's happened, they all have a debrief in the bar and everyone cries and does all the emotional stuff. They then all go to bed, And the traitors meet together to decide who they're going to murder and who will implicate by murdering different people. Another thing they can do, though, is recruit. They can decide that they want to add another traitor. So if a traitor's been voted out, they might decide that they want to recruit and have a new person come in to join the traitors. And there's other things like shields that can protect people from the night. And then there was another thing that was added, but we'll talk about that a bit later for this season. It's been a really interesting thing to watch, and I really enjoyed it up until the very last episode. And I know, Ross, you've watched the finale.
Yeah.
And Kate, we're probably going to give you spoilers, but the finale I found really difficult at the end, and we can talk about that a bit later. But there's been some iconic moments from this and some iconic characters from this season. So I would like to ask you, who have you particularly enjoyed watching?
I really warmed to Kaz in the first half.
Yeah.
Kasim, a doctor who just really sweet, really earnest man, and kind of got dogpiled on by lots of other characters. So he had my heart. And then in the latter sort of half, as the characters whittle down, new characters sort of come to the fore towards the end. I really liked Alexander, who's kind of rom-com dreamboat stuff. And also Francesca. She was an icon.
Yeah.
Sort of really gorgeous sort of mother sort of figure.
Yeah. So, Kate, you're halfway through. Literally, the series. So who do you like?
At the moment, I do really like Mina, who is one of the traitors. And I preferred her so much over the other two traitors, who were Armani
and Linda.
Linda. Because both Armani and Linda were kind of at extremes. And, like, Linda's really good to watch, but she was just, but she was just very unnatural in some aspects. Whereas Armani was just kind of pushing it far too hard. And I knew the moment her sister's also on the show, and like literally from the first episode, her sister was like, my sister's acting a bit weird. And and Armani just didn't like process that and just like doubled down. But when Mina, at least halfway through the season, she's kind of below the radar at the moment. She's not standing out too much, but she's not burying herself in the background. She's building friendships.
She plays a really good game, Mina does.
Yeah.
And actually what's really fun is seeing in her like direct to camera moments, her confessionals, just how much she loves being a traitor. And
she's proper villain, isn't she? It's great.
There's one night where they can't murder somebody, and she feels gutted. She feels robbed of being able to murder people.
You've already mentioned her, but Linda is a total icon because, unlike Armani, who her sister was like, well, she's acting a bit weird, but no one else sussed it. Linda, on the first night after she's just been announced a traitor, they're all sat round the round table, all trying to suss out who's just been picked. And Claudia Winkleman says traitors, and she looks straight at Claudia.
And then she's like, I look at people when they talk. That's what happened. And she just goes on, like, and she doubles down too much. Where is she just played it off? Like, oh, did I do that? Oh, I didn't notice I did that. Like, she wouldn't be as suspicious.
Yeah, I think I would have gone for the, I'm a slightly older lady and I could hear a noise, so I had to look so I could hear a bit better.
I need to see people's lips, like, when they're talking. Or like, I was just so on edge, I was just jumping at everything. Like...
Yeah,
it was particularly funny because we had her voiceover when her shoulder was touched because as a traitor, and she's talking about how she's working really hard to like regulate her breathing and stay really still to not give anything away. And I did love her on the train and in the cars going over to the castle, where she was trying to work out what is my role in this group, because she immediately sussed that Lisa, who's the vicar, but she didn't know she's a vicar, but Lisa, who was about 10 years younger than her, fell more naturally into a motherly role. And so Linda was like, right, I'm going to be like
the mad aunt,
random old lady.
Yeah.
Right. And she kind of like, right, I'm going to be eccentric. And she has purple hair, so she, she's very much that kind of. She's got the purple rinse.
She was an opera singer, so
she was an opera singer.
She lives for the drama.
She lives for the drama. But the guy who was sitting next to her, he clocked that immediately, that she kind of turned when Claudia said traitors. James.
Yeah.
Jake. Yeah, and she immediately makes him her nemesis. Like the way she talks about him.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I really like the friendship that develops between Linda and Lisa, our Anglican priest, as we said, she's incognito. She doesn't want people to know that she's a priest. Ruthie, do you want to talk about that moment on the train station?
Yeah, so Lisa is the first of the people that we meet on it, and she's there wearing her dog collar and introduces herself as an Anglican priest, and she is. She's not lying. This isn't one of the things that people are bluffing and saying, oh, if I pretend to be a priest, people might, I don't know, keep me in, whatever. But she decides to not tell people that she's a priest. So she's on the platform, ready to get on the train. She unbuttons her collar and takes the dog collar out. And we all do that. We know that's the sign of, I'm off duty now. We take the collar out. And so she decides to play the game without actually explaining to people that she is a priest. And then she makes a mistake in some ways. But she says a phrase where she says, as God is my witness, I am not a traitor. And people start picking up on this and going, what a weird phrase to use. Why would you use that? Da, 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 da. And because she hears all the gossip about it, she kind of gathers everyone in the library as a proper,
very Agatha Christie.
Oh, very Agatha Christie to go, the reason I said this phrase, as God is my witness, is because I'm a priest in the Church of England. I'm an Anglican priest. And everyone's like, what? And everyone immediately believes her, apart from Anna. Anna's like, well, that's sus. That's not, she's not a priest. No one believes this. And she says that's the reason why. And then she's convinced that night that she's going to die. She's going to be murdered. But she appears the next morning. She isn't murdered and appears in her dog collar. And people are like, oh. Yeah. And the night before, when she says it, they question it and are like, well, why are you here if you're a priest? And she says a brilliant line about, well, every self-respecting murder mystery has a priest in it. And they all just fall about laughing and are like, oh, okay, get it now. Yeah. But she says some really interesting things that, that confuse people, and I think it'd be good for us to talk about.
Yeah, but just a side note, she isn't the only character, the only member of the group who is presenting themselves differently or not presenting the whole of themselves. So there's a lady who is ex-army, but she kind of presents herself as a nail technician, kind of really pink, big bright pink suit, blonde hair, full on kind of Barbie mode, and she's really trying to keep the fact that she's ex-services kind of on the down low because she thinks that would make her more suspicious. There's also a character who's faking a Welsh accent and says she's from Abergavenny, which I live near Abergavenny, and that just made me a bit annoyed.
but a Welsh accent is a friendly accent. You're going to believe someone
most trustworthy.
That's her rationale.
Unfortunately, there is a Welsh translator for whom Welsh is her first language, also on the show. And actually, what I really liked is it Charlotte? Her name is
Charlotte's the one faking the accent.
Yeah. So she immediately, once she clocks that this other person is actually Welsh, she says, "Oh, but all my friends say I'm losing my accent because I live in London." And I thought, from my linguistics background, I thought, oh, that is such a clever way to cover your tracks there. When you know there's someone who's going to notice when your accent drops. Yeah.
And I got proper nerdy about this afterwards and watched, they do a kind of podcast, but it's also a video podcast that Ed Gamble does that is the Traitors Uncloaked. and I watched the episode about the finale, and loads of other episodes because I wanted to see different people's interviews. And they asked Charlotte about the accent, and she was really clever. She said, I put the accent on partly because it makes me more trustworthy, but also I have to think about what I'm saying more before I speak. And so I can't just launch into stuff. I have to kind of think it, translate it, and then go for it. And I thought, that is very, very smart.
And to be fair to her, it's a very good accent. I mean, her mum's Welsh, so probably she's actually more code switching is a term, rather in linguistics we talk about how you change your accent or your language depending on what groups of people you are. So there's probably a good chance that some of that Welsh accent is natural to her. It's just not what she primarily uses. Because it sounds too good, like when she gets really upset and emotional and she still manages to keep the accent.
She does it in Welsh.
That was when I was like, wow.
Very good.
There's a wonderful bit. The last line of the series is Claudia saying to the winners of the Traitors, saying, I can't wait for you to find out where Charlotte's from.
Yes.
Because of this whole ridiculous notion.
So she doesn't reveal that in her time on the Traitors, that she's not really Welsh.
But we do find out that Lisa is an Anglican priest. She is a colleague of ours in the Mission of Christ. And I think what's really interesting, the whole conversation is around, can she lie?
Yes. Yeah. And she does kind of say that. She says something about, because of my ordination vows, I can't lie. And I was thinking, yeah, you can. But
I don't remember that in the ordination vows. I mean, as a Christian, we're not, there's a whole different conversation, but it's not actually part of your ordination vows.
It's like, it made it sound like she's Pinocchio, and like, I don't know, like a dog colour grows if she lies or something like that. But I think what she was trying to convey was that she has to speak with integrity, and can't, because of who she is and that personhood of being a priest, she has to have integrity as part of that.
And especially with the fact that she's been saying, as God is my witness, actually that reflects back onto her as a priest. I am not taking the Lord's name in vain. If I take the Lord's name in vain, that is a big no-no. That's there in the Ten Commandments.
Swearing by God when you're lying, that's what the Ten Commandment is talking. One of the Ten Commandments is talking about. Like, don't do it.
Bad plan.
And she does lie later in that episode or the next episode during one of the missions, and everyone's like, oh, "You lied!" And she's like, "Yeah."
And what she said to that is, "I'm a vicar. I'm not a saint. I'm a priest. I'm not a saint," which was a brilliant line as well. And everyone falls about that too. But it just shows the humanity of her as well as...
I just want to fact check that.
Okay.
I think she says, I'm a priest, not a saint, to Claudia in her arrival interview.
Yeah, I think she does.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
That would make sense. Yeah. But it's still a great line. Like, yeah.
Maybe she uses it again, because it's a really good line.
It's a good line.
And what she's very good at not doing is then going into a theological analysis of what lying actually is. And like, you know, there's creative reordering of the truth. And then there's like straight out lying. And anyway, we're not going to get into like, what is lying and can we lie and all of that. It's particularly compelling because, as she says, all the good murder mysteries have a vicar in them.
We've talked about a number of murder mysteries on this podcast.
We've talked about a number of them. And it is kind of, throughout our podcast we talk about vicars on TV, and it is one of those tropes, is the vicar in the murder mystery, either they did it or they're the detective. Or they're perhaps the tool through which the detective finds out and discovers the truth. And it's the interesting function of a priest in a murder mystery, but also within a group, where even before her occupation is revealed, she is still a priest. And she's still doing things, like you see her with her arms around people and just quietly going around. Like, she doesn't get much screen time, but people talk about her as being really motherly and looking after them, and I found that really interesting.
It was really nice to see her priestly ministry just as part of who she is. As a person. I thought she was a really wonderful representation of the Church of England at its best. Because she shows that sweet, caring, pastoral, sort of rural side to the Church of England. She's very inclusive in the way that she relates to everybody. But also, going by her voting record, she's quite ineffectual and a bit bumbling. She gets it wrong every time.
Except there's one point, which you won't have seen, Kate, where she names people around the table that she thinks might be a traitor, and she absolutely nails it.
She does.
Blooming nails it. I saw a brilliant TikTok today that was like, Lisa's cheating in this. She's asking God for help and having intervention, and that's how she knows traitors, and that's cheating, and you can't do that. I just thought,
but that's interesting.
God's got busy things to do.
Once she comes in, once people know that she's a vicar, the whole language around her changes, and the way that people relate to her is kind of like, oh, can you say a prayer to God, or can you ask God to do this? Using language around repent, and I mean, spoiler alert, she gets murdered, and the traitors say, oh, I feel so naughty, we're murdering a priest. And it's fascinating to see the cultural language of the church and society there on TV.
But I think we've probably all experienced ourselves where the moment someone finds out that we're a priest, the way they relate to us shifts, and people are really weird about swearing in front of you, or they'll apologise for their behaviour, they'll skirt around anything they feel you might disapprove of, and have any of you ever not introduced yourself as a vicar and kind of hidden that you're a vicar, only to later reveal it, or to never reveal it?
Yes, absolutely. In lots of different occasions. Sometimes, like if it's your day off or something, you just want to fly under the radar, and you just want to do things without someone having to, suddenly deal with a crisis or something like that, just so you can be, you. But then sometimes, you pull it out at other times just to see what people do about it. And going back to what you just said about people kind of changing their language and altering themselves around you, I've had a really lovely thing happening to me here where people have gone back. So they have they've been themselves, then gone, oh gosh, it's the vicar, and kind of changed their language a bit, and then as they've just seen me be me and normal, they've gone back to who they are with everyone else. And that has been such a lovely thing for me to go, oh, okay, like people are relaxing around me more in some ways, and just feel that they can be them and not just on like best behaviour or like they're off to go see the parents of their date and stuff like that, and it's and they just are them, and it's so nice.
For me, it tends to be I'm on a night out and people find out I'm a vicar, and then they come and talk to me about their pastoral issues growing up, and it's like, okay, thank you. But, and all of a sudden you're doing pastoral theology and care with Lady Gaga blasting in the background.
Or after you've had just maybe one drink too many, and then someone comes up with a really serious question, you're like, right, I need to think.
It's amazing how quickly now. It's amazing how quickly you can sober up.
When I was on my dating sites, I skirted around being a vicar because the times when I was open about being a vicar, I ended up just with like either people wanted to ask about the church and ask about being a vicar, or they were like, "You're a vicar, you're not supposed to ignore my message," and it was just like, oh. So anyway, there was that.
Or
But
you get
actually,
creeps.
more often at the moment, what I get is like having to reveal I'm a vicar when I'm on the phone to like the car insurance company, or like Christian Aid called me up because they're one of the charities I support. And Christian Aid were like, oh, so like, how did you find out about Christian Aid? Why do you support us? I'm like, well, I'm a vicar, and I thought it was a good charity to support. Found out about you through the church. Or like with the car insurance stuff, it's like, they're like, do you use your vehicle for business? And you're like, oh, right, yeah, so my job is this, and that means I have to use the car to get from A to B for lots of visiting. So yes, it's business use, but it's also not business use. So for me, I'm doing the revealing more when it's like, oh, I've got to explain this really complicated aspect of my existence and how I work.
Yeah. And so go back to Traitors. Lisa chooses not to reveal it because she thinks people will trust her less, or she'll be more suspicious.
Or she'll be able to relate to people more. I thought it was more kind of a social.
Yeah.
Like, there wouldn't be that barrier.
Yeah. So I think that's really interesting because, yeah, what you said about murder mysteries of either the vicar's helping in some way, either to commit the murders or to solve them, or is just slightly doddery in the background. And it's a question we've asked lots of times. Do we think that's how people still see vicars? Do you think she's challenged that narrative in some ways?
I think she continues that challenge in the media that we need, that we originally have with Dawn French as Geraldine Granger.
Yeah.
I think there's something about the church as it is in the world, as a big institution which is complex and complicated and ends up standing for things that those involved would rather it, not be associated with. And there's a lot of that going on at the moment with safeguarding scandals in the House of Bishops. But I think with characters like Geraldine Granger in The Vicar of Dibley, real life examples like Kate Botley and Lisa of the Traitors, we see...
And me, because I've been on radio one time.
I beg your pardon, and also Ruthie of Radio 5.
Or just the mini vicar in the community. I'm now known as the mini vicar, and you know
the
what?
Mini vicar.
Actually, if that's like local celebrity, whatever, but there's something about the personability, which we offer versus the monolith of the Church of England, which has some huge, huge issues and mistakes and dirty laundry being aired currently in the press.
Which I think we're all probably okay to say, but I'm speaking on behalf of you at the moment, that I think that's a really good thing.
Yeah.
Actually, if you've got a fruit bowl and you've got mouldy fruit in the centre of it, it affects everything. So actually you have to, get it out and go, this is gross, make a fresh start in order for the health of the whole community. So it's hard and rubbish and all this stuff, but it's necessary and vital.
Well, at the same time, having those who are offering still that personal relationship with the church, where actually there is something to relate to, and who you can ask. What I had someone ask me at a funeral the other day, what do you think about Justin Welby? And I was able to talk about what I think about Justin Welby.
Yeah.
Honestly.
There's I might have said this on here before, but about my time in General Synod, but I've called it a graceless
Were you on General
space.
Synod, Ross?
I was on General Synod. I also lived in
Went to Rome
for a
as
bit.
well.
But yeah, but there is it is a graceless space in my experience. However much good work does come out of that place as well, but the difference is that of empire in person, and I would always come back into the parish and be reminded of this is what the body of Christ and the kingdom of God is like here in those small, intimate, personable relationships with people, trying to do life well together, following that way of love that Christ sets before us. And I really like the way that Lisa, I think, kind of scoops that up and brings it into the Traitors as somebody who is living out this vocation, this faith, in the ways we were talking earlier, the way that she's caring for people throughout the whole thing, and invested in the people. Which is why we tune into reality TV.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get invested in people.
We get, and I think Lisa kind of does it right in that she's really focusing on relationships that she's building with others. And I mean, wasn't there on a comparative reality TV show, The Circle, wasn't there a vicar on one of those seasons as well?
I couldn't tell you.
Oh, yeah, that was
a vague memory.
A show about lying.
Which is also, that's also a show about lying, but I think he presented himself as he was. And I don't think he was very successful. But we'll try and remember and find out whether that's actually true or not. But it's that interesting playing with that thought. Does being a vicar make you more or less trustworthy?
Yeah, and I think in the Traitors, because they got to know Lisa and knew her more, as soon as she revealed that, they were on board with that, apart from Anna. But they just looked at her and went, right, she's a faithful then, because of how she's talked. And she does eventually get murdered, which proves that she's a faithful. Because why would the traitors murder a traitor? And I found really interesting from that, when people were on board and like, yep, we understand who she is, we believe her, they started using more God language in their speaking. So there was a lot more, I swear to God, and all this kind of stuff that was used after her revelation and it being shown that she was, true and a faithful, which I thought people are grabbing onto that and trying to say, well, I must be as well because I'm using the God language stuff. Or maybe that's just me reading far too into it, which is very likely as well.
Since watching The Traitors and starting my binge yesterday, in my head I've been imagining, and planning for Easter and Holy Week, I've been thinking a lot about that scene at the Last Supper where Jesus is like, one of you is going to betray me. And now Jesus is Claudia Winkleman saying, one of you is a traitor, the rest of you are faithful. And then they're all like...
Peter's like, I'm a faithful. I'm
100% a faithful.
I'd never betray you.
And Jesus says, in the voice of Claudia Winkleman, you have said so.
And yes... So the iconic traitor from that is Judas. And I know, Ross, you've done lots of thinking about Judas, haven't you?
Yeah, Judas was the biblical character who really helped me as my faith grew up, as it were. At the university, I was working through my faith, what it meant for me to be a Christian, and Judas was my way in to understanding and reflecting on salvation. So I wrote a play called You, Judas, and put it on at the drama barn at the University of York. And people said very good things about it. People said it was great. And so I've got a bit of a soft spot for Judas. One of my favourite plays is about Judas that I read as research. It's called The Last Days of Judas Iscariot by playwright Stephen Adweek-Burgess. And that's fascinating as well, thinking about heaven, hell, purgatory, despair, and so a lot of my adult theology comes from wrestling and working with Judas, the traitor.
Yeah. He's a really interesting character, isn't he, Judas? And there's lots of questions that are asked about predestination within. You know,
Yeah.
actually, someone had to betray Jesus, and you know, what if Judas had said no? Would someone else have done the job? And you know, he's a very important, pivotal character that we all just immediately demonise.
And what's interesting, perhaps, you know, comparing what people remember most about the story of Jesus in Holy Week and what people love about the traitors is the traitor. People remember the drama. People, there is that tension and that between good and evil, or but where the characters are all thought to be good. It's the betrayal that really gets people, and that's what people remember about Holy Week. They remember, oh, Judas. People call each other. You know, people will say, "You're such a Judas for betraying people." And I was actually really interested in the fact that didn't come up in the Traitors. Not at least it wasn't. It wasn't televised, at least. But people remember the story of Judas betraying Jesus because it is an iconic betrayal, and because I think that goes against everything that it is to be human. We know that to be human and to live well together, to work well together, we need to be honest and open and to be able to trust one another. And to break that trust is one of the oldest sins. And that's what makes the Traitors compelling television, and that's what makes Judas such a compelling biblical character.
But what's interesting about what we remember of Judas's betrayal, where people, if you ask them to tell you what they know about Judas, people will talk about the 30 pieces of silver, and they'll talk about the kiss on the cheek to identify Jesus. They might talk about Jesus telling Judas to go do what he needed to do, but what they'll not talk about as much will talk about the guilt that Judas felt afterwards, and that he tries to give the money back, and actually has an incredibly tragic end where he takes all of his guilt on himself at the end. And one of the reflections that I've had is that in Holy Week particularly, it was a sort of a Good Friday reflection that I was thinking through, is you've got these two trees. You've got Judas, who ends his own life, taking all of his own guilt on himself, and it crushes him. And then you have Jesus taking the guilt of the whole world on his shoulders, also on a tree, and his life ending. And in that moment, you have those dual images. And part of me likes to think that Jesus looks over at Judas and kind of gives him a nod again. That's me personally, because kind of echoing Jesus did nod him on to betray him. But partly that was inspired by Kate Botley. She did in 2016 a really interesting documentary called In the Footsteps of Judas, where she goes to the Holy Land and she basically walks through the whole story really powerfully, and then she ends up in the field where Judas's life ended, and talks a bit about that as well. So it's no longer on BBC iPlayer. I'm sure it's somewhere.
Yeah, really, really hard.
What I really enjoyed writing the play was exploring whether Judas can receive salvation.
He has to be able to. He has to, like, otherwise the whole point of Jesus dying on the cross is null and void. Like, if the person who betrays Jesus is barred from that, then that... Yeah, that sets parameters.
I revisited the script the other day because I was trying to work out what to do with the cathedral for my first proper Easter, as it were. And it's interesting rereading it and just looking at the theology that's in there, and it's like, oh gosh, I don't know if that's what I believe theologically anymore about what's happening on the cross.
Interesting.
I mean, it was a significant step for me in working out my own faith. And my own theology, but that was just the start of something new.
And it's important to recognise that all of faith is a journey, And what we have in the Gospels and in Acts and all the references in the New Testament to Judas are written by hurting, betrayed people. You know, all the stories which have been handed down by those people. So, of course, what we encounter in the New Testament is the pain of being betrayed, right? But that's just a fraction of the story.
Is it John's gospel that always does that? Yeah. And Jesus was with him, in brackets, the one who would betray him. Yeah. And like every time Judas's name is mentioned.
Like... But that's John. John is the one who Jesus loved. And Peter and the beloved disciple were racing him, and the beloved disciple won. That's John. Like so his sassy sides.
Oh, yeah. So, speaking of traitors still, going back to the traitors, if we were involved in this game, would you want to be a traitor or would you want to be faithful? Kate, let's start with you.
Firstly, I couldn't handle it. I could not put myself in that situation. For like one evening's game, if it was just like one evening's game, I'd want to be a traitor. Like or a faithful, because I enjoy murder mystery games. For an extended period of time, I would hate it. I'd probably want to be a faithful, because I couldn't live as a traitor for more than an evening, if that makes sense. I couldn't inhabit that character.
It does sound like a really intense experience to be on the TV show The Traitors, because you're locked away from the real world for like 2 weeks, and it's, I think I would rather be a traitor. I think I'd find being a faithful more stressful because you don't have control over who's going and what people are thinking of you and all that kind of thing. I think as a control freak, I would want to be a traitor. I don't know that I would be a good traitor. I don't think that. I think I would lean into the priest part of me and would try to rationalize a lot with people and sort of say, okay, well, maybe this person acted that way because of this. Because a lot of the times you got people who are sort of saying, oh, that person looked at me funny, or why did they say that? And it's actually, well, maybe they said that because this. Maybe they said it because that. But I think I would always be trying to de-escalate and be a peacemaker.
Yeah.
But I do. And I think it would also be mega stressful. I think I'd be rubbish at the missions.
There's a lot of heavy lifting in the missions and running. I ain't fitting off for that.
What about you, Ruthie?
Well, I think, and I'm going to link this to the final episode and try to keep it as spoiler-free as possible for Kate, that if the money wasn't a factor, if it was just you win the competition, you win a trophy, being a traitor would be great fun, because when I played Mafia or Murder in the Dark or whatever we played it as a kid, of course it's far more fun to play the Mafia and to try to take people out and try and, play the game as part of it. But in this series, they have a dinner party towards the end on one of the final nights, and they all explain what the money would mean to them and how it would affect them, and lots of them talk about, the struggles that they're having in life, and just sitting in that room as a traitor, just going, my decision making really affects you, I wouldn't find comfortable doing. So in that case, I would want to be faithful.
But I think that would be the case even as a faithful.
Yeah.
I think if I was sitting in that room as a faithful and someone talks about what they want to spend the money on, and I'm there like, well, like Joe does, I think it is. He's like, I want to spend the money on a nice new house. Or whatever. Well, everyone has to talk about charity or paying off their parents' loans or whatever. And he's like, I want some nice things. And I think even as a faithful, I would be sitting there thinking, gosh, everyone's in it for much more meaningful reasons than I am.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
Yeah, it's tricky. And the final episode, they get to they don't reveal as people leave for the last one, I think it is, if they're a traitor or if they're a faithful. So when it gets to the final thing, they do this thing around a fire pit, and in this case, there were 4 people stood around the fire pit, and they have to decide if they still think there's a traitor in the midst, and decide to do more votes and stuff like that. And I am going to spoil it a bit, Kate, I'm really sorry. But it turns out all 4 people around the fireplace are faithfuls, but they vote other people out. And so you're sat there going, oh, like, all of you have the chance to win this money, and it would affect your life so much. And it just showed the horribleness of human nature and the lack of trust, and because that's part of the game, that they turned on each other despite the fact that they all could have won the money. And that was, at the end, I was a bit like, oh, I don't like this bit. Yeah.
Right at the very beginning of the series, to kind of jump to the other bookend, they haven't even got to the castle yet, and they're all on a train.
Oh, yeah.
And basically, across these 3 carriages, they are told somebody has to get off, otherwise they're going to be losing money from the jackpot. And one of the conversations I've had is that what we see there are people sacrificing themselves, and basically, as far as they know, giving up their chance to play the game and be on the show. And what was interesting, what came up in a conversation I was having with someone, was the fact that Lisa, the priest, who preaches about sacrificial lamb, Jesus Christ, stays
Lisa.
in...
she didn't put herself forward. I noticed that.
And that's a really interesting thing about it. What should she have done? What would Jesus do in that?
I probably would have found myself doing that. I was thinking, like, my first instinct was, well, you just need to draw straws.
Yeah, I thought that straws.
Just, and I know someone suggests that, and they're like, oh, that wouldn't be fair, but actually it's the fairest.
Which is Alexander, solution. And he was really smart, so... Because I'm, like, fully deep diving into all of this, in one of the interviews afterwards, he said he took a gamble with that because, having seen the show, he knows that people are either banished or murdered. And in the wording, they weren't referred to as banished or murdered. So he took the risk of getting off thinking, I might come back in later on. I was like, oh, he is smart.
To borrow the language charming. To borrow the language of Game Changer on Dropout, which I've been watching a lot. It's the loop-de-loop. It's like immediately there's a loop-de-loop there. A loop-de-loop is obviously, we know game shows, we know these sort of things. Like they're going to come back at some point. Even RuPaul's Drag Race has this, where eliminated contestants are brought back. You've been cast. They're not going to go through that whole process of them introducing you and putting you on screen to not bring you back in some way. So.
And hey, you know who also came back later in this season? Jesus Christ from the dead. He was betrayed, but did it matter? No, because he's always faithful.
So we were thinking about games we could play for this, and it would have been great fun for us to play werewolf or stuff like that, or mafia, but with 3 of us, it's a little bit difficult to do that. So we've come up with a different concept. Kate, do you want to explain what we're doing?
So you may or may not be familiar with the British TV panel show called Would I Lie to You?
Great show.
In which 2 teams compete with each other, where they take it in turns to read a statement that is either true or false, and the other team have to guess whether it's a truth or a lie to win the points. We're going to play something like that, where each of us has prepared a statement, anecdote, something, which is either faithful or traitorous,
Yeah, great.
We think we've picked things that we don't already know about each other. We were going to do two truths and a lie, but I think we know each other too well, probably, to be able to do that. So, that's our game.
I'm still not convinced about my statement.
Yeah.
Like...
We might all be being faithful. We might all be traitorous. Who knows?
It's very intense.
Yeah.
Ding, ding.
Ross, do you want to go first?
I really don't.
Shall I go first then?
Yes, please.
Go on then, Kate.
Since it was my suggested format. Okay. I've written it
Ready.
out.
Okay.
When I was in year 5, I once planned an elaborate prank to get revenge on my then best friend, who, being a year older, had tried to convince me that she was set to attend a certain Scottish boarding school for witches and wizards. My plan was, 1, buy special parchment paper and handwrite a school acceptance letter with a supply list in green ink addressed to her. 2, convince my dad to drive us out to her village in the dead of night so I could put it through the letterbox. 3, act surprised when she told me about it. And then finally, the next time we spoke, act like my memories had been wiped off the school, its associated book series, and even her.
Okay.
Blimey.
That's quite a statement.
That is.
Do
we get to ask you questions? Like,
Yeah, you
would
can
I
ask
like
me
you?
questions.
Yeah, we should,
Okay,
like,
okay.
yeah. Okay. So, what had the friend done to prank you that you were so upset about?
Oh, so we used to play make-believe imagination in this book series all the time. It was what we'd bonded over. And because she was a year older than me, she decided to try and convince me that she was going to that boarding school and would be moving away and I wouldn't see her again.
Okay, so you were playing off her prank. Okay.
Okay.
So did you do this prank?
Of course.
Did it work?
No.
What was your friend's name?
Sophie.
Sophie.
But she likes to be called Fliss.
Fish?
No, she likes to be called Fliss.
Oh, Fliss. Okay.
I don't know why.
Okay. So, me and Ross will confer. I can imagine fully a young Kate making up this elaborate ruse, but I don't think she would have gone through with it.
Oh.
Partly because whether her dad would have driven her in the night to go and... So I can fully imagine Kate in, you say year 5, writing this all down in her diary of a plan to get revenge, but I don't think she would have gone through with it. So I'm going to suggest that she's being a traitor.
I'm going to suggest faithful because her father is ordained, and I think ordained dads are up for weird things sometimes. So I'm going to say she's being faithful.
Okay.
Okay.
Kate, will you reveal to us if you're being a traitor or faithful?
I am being faithful. But as I said, unfortunately, so I managed to handwrite the letter. And I managed to convince my dad that we needed to drive out so I could put it through the letterbox. Unfortunately, she sussed it immediately.
Oh, good.
Yeah. I mean, we even got as far as me having a phone call with her and trying to pretend that I'd just forgotten her. But she knew I was... Yeah, she sussed me out.
That's nice. Very good. Very good. Right.
Okay. I've got a statement.
Who's going next? Go for it, Ross.
I once lied about my age, got it wrong, and embarrassed my whole family.
Okay.
Okay.
What were the circumstances in which you were lying about your own age?
So I was with my family, and we wanted to go into somewhere that had an age restriction.
Okay.
We wanted to try to get me in, with cheaper admission fare.
Okay.
So my mum told me to lie about my age.
Your mother?
How did you get it wrong?
I got it wrong because I had to make myself younger. And when they asked me what year I was born, I went 1989. So I aged myself up instead of down.
Oops.
Yeah. And thus embarrassed my whole family because Mum was there, having said, hey, lie about your age. And then I not only tried to lie, I then messed that lie up majorly.
And where was this?
It was the Empire State Building in New York.
Okay. So, I believe you have been to the States with your family. And I believe you are goofy enough to age the wrong way. I love you, Ross, but...
I don't know that that's a thank you moment, but thank you.
What year were you born?
I was born in 1990. I was 12 at the time.
And it was 11 and under.
Yeah, so the thing where I'm stuck here is whenever I've gone with my family to somewhere where they've had to buy a child's admission for me, or family ticket, whatever, I have never been asked my age. My parents might have been asked my age, but they've never addressed me, the child, or supposed child, or whatever, and
Good
interrogated
question.
me what year I was born in.
Yeah.
To be fair, this was America.
But
Yeah.
before... No, it would have... No, even with it being post 9/11, I can't see why they would interrogate the child.
Well, look at Ross. He's very suspicious.
It's the beard.
I don't know what you mean. I'm 100% faithful.
We'll be inspired by... the only time we're inspired by Margaret Thatcher to... and that's to find people with beards suspicious.
There you go. Kate, what are you going to say?
I'm going to say... I believe that your mum might have asked you to pretend to be a year younger, but I don't think you would have been interrogated by whoever was at the desk. I think they have too many people going past them, and 12-year-olds look just like you don't look that different to an 11-year-old. I don't think. I think you're being traitorous.
I'll go the opposite then, just for the fun, and because apparently you're not very good at this game. I will say you are a faithful Ross. Don't let me down.
Guys, I've had the most amazing time with you. You're all top people, and it's nothing personal. I am, and always have been, a faithful.
Oh.
Yay!
At age 12, I looked quite old. I was quite spotty, so I think I looked older. She was trying to get me younger, and so I was really cuspy. In terms of it.
Got you.
But I just did the wrong maths. Ruthie!
My go. Okay.
Bring it on.
Okay.
As a child, when I grew up, I wanted to be a mermaid.
Tell us more.
I mean, does it need any more?
How old were you when you wanted to, are we talking you're 16 and it's your career plan?
I mean,
Ariel?
Yeah. And how long did you want to be a mermaid? Are we talking 1 day or 1 week of imaginative play, or a dedicated year's worth?
No, it was fairly dedicated for a while, and this was before like they had mermaids in aquariums and stuff like that. I think I was very heavily into the Little Mermaid, and I think I had a Barbie of her and that kind of thing, and therefore I think I figured it could work the other way. Like if Ariel could get legs, then surely I could get fins. And I loved dolphins as a kid. Like, yeah, I was one of those dolphin kids, and so I figured that what best way to hang out with dolphins than to be a mermaid.
What colour was your fin going to be? Your tail?
Oh, it was probably going to be green like Ariel, because my hair was a brighter red at that time, so I think I just wanted to be Princess Ariel. Because she's a babe.
How did your family feel about this career plan?
I think it probably took them slightly by surprise. And I believe they were kind and encouraging, especially at bath times, because that's when you lie back in the bath and you put your hair out so you feel like a mermaid, and just encourage that. But I think it was probably suggested eventually that maybe other career paths were an option.
How old were you?
I'm thinking probably like 5 or 6. I can't remember the exact age.
What year were you born?
I was born 91. So Little Mermaid had been out because it was in 89 that it came out.
Yeah.
So you would have been at least 8 rather than 5 or 6.
No, Little Mermaid came out in 89 and I was born in 91.
Sorry.
So it'd been out for 2 years beforehand.
It's very easy to get the maths wrong.
The maths is very easy. So I happen to know that your favourite Disney movie is Beauty and the Beast.
I was thinking this as well.
That came to me much older though.
Beauty and the Beast came out in 1991.
Yeah, same year as me. So I won't have watched that for a while, but I had seen Little Mermaid.
I can imagine you identifying with Ariel and the red hair.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see that, but I don't know that you would want to be a mermaid when you grew up. I don't think that's your narrative.
I think you would. I think, knowing your impulsivity, I think you would want to be a mermaid now, and that you would just be living as much as a mermaid as you could.
I think
rather than
mermaid priest.
Rather than wanting to.
That's what the lie is. The lie here is
being a mermaid, rather than thinking when I grow up I'm going to be a mermaid. Yeah. I think you would have just been like, oh, I'm a mermaid now.
My identity is mermaid.
Okay. I'm going to come out and I'm going to say I think you are a traitor.
And I'm gonna just for contrast, I'll go with faithful, because I think I could see you wanting to be a mermaid. I still think it would probably more like I'm a mermaid rather than when I grow up, delayed gratification. But you're being faithful.
Well, come to the end of this journey. Enjoyed it from the start and just love you guys. And I know it's just a game. We're all just playing and we're here as friends. But I am a traitor.
Oh.
I know. But I genuinely had written down a different true statement, but then I thought it's really cliche if all the vicars are saying something true, so I'll just make something up. A friend of mine did want to be a mermaid when she grew up, and so it's like, yeah, it was not my narrative, but yeah. There we go.
I'm well chuffed with myself.
I think you both have me sussed pretty well. This is why I would be a bad traitor.
Oh, you know what we should do?
What?
Maybe we should reach out to Reverend Lisa of the Traitors and see if she'll guest star.
Oh, we totally should, yes.
Yeah.
Do you think she'll do it?
Yeah. Well, we should ask her.
If you guys can also just go, oh, Lisa, you should go speak to these people because they're great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
cool.
totally.
Get to dish the dirt.
Yeah, exactly. So, if you're already a listener, Rev Lisa, please contact us. We'd love to hear more about your experience. But she's probably got like BBC One contacting her, not BBC Live.
Or, like BBC Sounds
12:45.
podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Rather than
okay.
obscure Spotify podcasts.
Yeah. So what have we talked about, Kate?
So we have talked about Traitors and the show. We've talked about priests and whether we're more inherently trustworthy or not, whether priests can lie. And we've talked a bit about Judas as well, and a kind of the traitor of the faith.
The ultimate biblical traitor.
The ultimate biblical traitor, Judas Iscariot, the one of the 12.
Scandalo.
We hope you've enjoyed this. We hope that you will reach out and watch the Traitors yourselves, because we've enjoyed it a lot, as I'm sure you can tell. And we hope you also enjoyed our little Would I Lie to You factoids about ourselves.
Yeah.
If you have any ideas about other things we should watch, particularly if something which is current and involves a vicar or something that people are talking about, do let us know. And in all of the things, may God bless you and keep you and hold you for the rest of your day.
Even if you're a traitor.
Amen.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Vicars Watch Dibley. Thank you to Nat for editing our ramblings.
Any opinions expressed are our own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Church of England or any other organisation with which we are affiliated.
If you like our podcast, leave us a review, follow us on social media and share it with your friends. And, as always, bless you for listening.
What do you call a contestant who correctly guesses a traitor purely by chance?
Joe.
I don't know. What do we call that person?
Sherlock Holmes.
Sherlock Holmes. Nice. Nice. Very good.
Excellent. That's really good.
Right, let's record our
Nice
intro.